Alright. Hey, what's up? It's Mossy. Welcome back to World End ECONOMiCA. I haven't touched this game in the longest time. And we're just gonna get right back into it. Yep. Sounds about right. Oh, great. So am I Yoshiharu? So what we're saying? Oh, she's a runaway too.
Right, same idea with Several. This place is a crossroads, and so according to the teachings, I have a bucket for washing your feet and a cup of cold water ready to give.
Feet? Water? I made a face as if to say, what is this woman even talking about? Lisa saw, and instead of getting angry, she breathed a disappointed sigh.
Do you happen to be born and bred on the moon?
Yeah, but so what? After I asked this back at her, Lisa shook her head, disappointed. Was she making fun of me? Was that what it was? As I glared at her, Lisa looked towards the statue of the dude stuck on the cross. The dude placed her hands together and bowed her head.
Oh Lord, you have brought upon me a great trial.
Then, as she said this, she made a strange gesture with her right hand in front of her body. As I wondered what she was doing, Lisa faced me and began to speak.
For now, why don't you take a bath? I'm not trying to be Hagana, but you are a little dirty.
Okay, Lisa is the pink-haired girl. Gotcha. Being told this to my face was actually a bit embarrassing. Sorry. As I said this, trying to hide my embarrassment, Hagana, who had been watching the situation quietly, picked up where Lisa left off. Back, you smell terrible. Damn. After that, I began to be especially conscious about my own body. That day, I realized that I was a far more emotional and innocent age than I had thought. What? It's like a revelation that the narrator would have gone through, not the character. Anyways, it was the first proper bath I'd had since running away from home, and I was on the verge of tears. Huh? Both of my parents were immigrants from Japan, so soaking in the tub was pretty much a daily tradition. It would be the only luxury my parents enjoyed, if I had to think of any. You could find water circulating all over the lunar surface, but you definitely couldn't say water was inexpensive because of that. I heard that the reason they made water flow visibly everywhere was because water had a calming effect on the human soul. Even if that weren't true, I heard that all but the few places on Earth were short of water, and that half of international disputes stem from water resource issues. What? What happened to the oceans? Perhaps the visible presence of water was to put some of the immigrants' anxieties to rest, since they believed that fights over water resources were an everyday occurrence due to their coming from various regions on Earth. However, what I was currently soaking in was apparently water siphoned off before final processing, and thus it was quite cheap. At the bottom of the tub, I could see pieces of aquatic plants used for water purification like I'd see on waterways. It wasn't just water that was limited on Moon. Unlike Earth, the Moon didn't have vast quantities of various resources. Most of them were created from chemical processing of native lunar materials, or failing that, imported via the orbital elevator. That's why people said that the government organization in charge of managing the lunar surface had terrible precise control. What? Oh. Managing the lunar surface had terribly precise control over the flow of various materials throughout the city. The most important of those was water, and thus the amount of oxygen and hydrogen. And any amount of oxygen could be obtained by using the plentiful amount of solar radiation to break down silicon dioxide, sand, in other words. Hydrogen, however, could be only obtained by hydrocarbons that only existed at the poles. Hydrogen is too light for the Moon's gravity to retain it, and thus naturally occurring hydrogen was quite rare. Carbon could be obtained by using the limitless electrical power here to break down solid carbon dioxide shipped in from the orbital elevator. Oxygen could also... Holy shit. I guess this is like one of the main reasons why I didn't come back for such a long time. There's just huge chunks of information every now and then. Oxygen could also be obtained from this process, thus killing two birds with one stone. Nitrogen and the various minerals needed for the growth of plants and animals could only be obtained through chemical pellets transported in through the orbital elevator. This basic knowledge was supposedly taught to all kids in elementary school during science class. What? Elementary school? Unfortunately, I hadn't really applied myself in school and thus had to learn it much later. What got to me to learn about this was when I had first started seriously trading stocks and wanted to figure out who had the best slice of the pie when it came to the various systems on the moon. I had naively thought that investing in that would guarantee smooth sailing, and that would be that. I learned a lot while operating under that notion, and thus it wasn't all that rose-tinted stuff they teach you at school. I remember sighing in awe at the systems revolving around rights tied to important resources to lunar cities. The public parts were, of course, controlled by the government. The most powerful on the civilian side had to be Emerald Industries, which held the civilian rights to the orbital elevator. By the way, if you were wondering about why the company was named after emeralds, it was because a long time ago, people said that the moon's core was made of emerald? It was originally a maintenance company, but since this was such a complicated piece of machinery, there weren't many qualified guys who could work on it. This was a textbook example of what would happen if they were also quite crafty. The majority of the infrastructure on the moon was under the umbrella of Emerald Industries and its related subsidiary companies. During the time it took me to come out of the bathroom, dry myself off, put on the obviously old t-shirt and pants, I must have interacted with products from 100 to 200 of Emerald Industries' various subsidiaries. Is my computer waterproof? This was a totally artificial city. So artificial, it would put Las Vegas and Dubai to shame, even though those were lauded as cities with fountains in the desert. I hadn't seen either city with my own eyes, but I had seen footage of them. People on Earth sure were idiots, I thought candidly to myself.
All freshened up?
When I came out of the changing room, Lisa was lying back on the sofa. There was a cup of water she poured for me on the table. The changing room connected straight into the living room. In it was an old and worn sofa set that she must have picked up from a dump somewhere, along with a coffee table and a carpet whose corners must have been mended countless times. There was no TV, but there was a computer. Also on the coffee table was a multi-function terminal that Lisa had been using just now. What had surprised me was the thick book next to it. It was a rare event to see real books on the moon where space and resources were limited. I had thought until relatively recently that books were simply an application interface format. I didn't realize that things that resembled what was drawn on the screen actually existed. People who came from Earth made fun of people who grew up on the moon for things like that. However, from my point of view, people from Earth were the ones who had something messed up in their heads, since they still stuffed these ridiculously bulky books into places like libraries.
Is it rare to see a real book?
I came to when Lisa asked me a question. Once more, she had the multi-function terminal in her hand, most likely reading a book again. Well, even if I had snapped back saying that I don't know what I don't know, her treating me like some naive idiot would piss me off. And thus I mumbled my reply while putting on a poker face, but Lisa didn't make fun of me.
Well, they certainly take up space. They also get dirty easily, so you'd have to take good care of them. Furthermore, you couldn't really search them, so digital version is 100 times better.
I instantly realized she was doing this out of consideration for me. It was as if she was a kindergarten teacher who had a good idea of what would cause immigrants from Earth and moon-bred kids to get into a fight. And that is I pointed at the thick but warm book at the table. There were some gold-colored alphabet-looking characters on the back cover, but I couldn't quite parse them. Blah.
This to me was the most important book in the world, and thus brought with me to the Earth, from Earth. Even though I parted with Julie, who had been with me since the day I was born. Oh, she's my pet dog, by the way. Even if I parted with Julie, I could not bear to leave that book back on Earth.
Lisa laid the mobile terminal aside and carefully stroked the front cover of the tattered book. Upon seeing that, I flashed back to when I was a naive kid from being patted on the head by my parents' hands, roughened from working outdoors. Oh, when did you come from Earth?
We got chased out of our place when I was 11. With that, my parents made the bold move to apply for lunar immigration. We didn't really have any money, thus we had to apply through the commoner's category, which had ridiculous odds. Well, my parents' professions were kind of special, and since the NOAA system was still in effect, we managed to get placed into a preferential category.
NOAA system?
It was how people referred to the system for the preservation of multiculturalism. Well, I guess you wouldn't know about it unless you were involved in it. Well, there was this story about Noah's Ark. Well, there was some legend or oral tradition or teaching or whatever that talked about how when the world had turned into evil, it was destroyed by a huge flood. Good people and pairs of animals rode out in the flood in a boat and went on to create a virtuous world after water receded, something like that. My parents were both theological scholars. I guess they needed people of that odd profession as well.
It was the first time I had heard the term theological scholar. Lisa picked up the nearby terminal and showed me a dictionary entry. There were apparently people who studied religious teachings. I was truly surprised that people who gave up their lives to such useless things were here on the moon.
And thus, this book was like my soul, to someone like me who had been raised in such a household. There were many authors depending on which chapter it was, but it was mostly written around 2,000 years ago.
It's a Bible? Oh, I actually didn't piece it together until now.
It's actually the best-selling book on Earth, you know.
Oh? Is it that interesting? Lisa laughed out loud when I showed a bit of an interest in the book while looking at it.
Oh, hell no, sorry. Well, if you asked me whether it was interesting or not, I'd say it was interesting in its own way. But it isn't really that kind of book. This is called the Bible. Remember the figure you saw in the church? This was the book written by the disciples of the guy pinned up there. It's a book of religious teachings, so to speak. They estimate that over 1 billion copies have been sold.
1 billion copies?
It's because it could be found everywhere on Earth. It was translated into the words spoken by people all over the Earth. So in other words, everyone on Earth reads it? If only that were the case.
A question mark appeared on my face when I heard Lisa's reply.
The Earth's population is roughly 6.5 billion.
Wait a minute. Is it? I thought it was like 5.8 billion. And wouldn't it be like exponentially grown in this timeline? Earth's population. Oh! What? Okay, I was totally wrong. So the world population to date, 2017 by November 2017, is approximately 7.6 billion. What is happening? Wouldn't this game be like coming to like maybe 14 billion? Like twice that number?
Even in an age where 700,000 of those would come to the moon, roughly a third of the people on Earth couldn't read, and 2/3 had no surroundings where they could sit down and read a book. The remaining fortunate 1/3 had tons of other forms of entertainment: video games, 3DS, movies, Netflix, internet access, public restrooms. Don't mind why I said the last part. There are few people reading the Bible nowadays, even among Christians. Even at the church I attended, there were a few people who knew that there were 4 books that comprised the Gospels, And even less people knew the names of 4 authors. You probably don't understand how sad this fact is.
Sorry, I totally don't have a clue here.
Well, that's alright. I've already got a heavy load due to having to carefully watch over this old church. Still, knowledge passes on when people cross paths. Trivia used to refer to wisdom, and the word's original meaning was that of a 3-way intersection where people would cross paths. I had wondered what would be the point of having all these lost people meeting at such an intersection. It was perhaps a sign that I realized I would be a shepherd watching over sheep.
A shepherd? I'd seen images of sheep being herded by sirens and electrical fences before while searching certain potential investment candidates. But how is this related to managers of those factories? Seeing me totally drawing a blank, Lisa laughed weakly and said,
Sorry, it's just a metaphor. I haven't actually seen a real shepherd either.
I guess it wasn't just a metaphor not knowing stuff because I was born on the moon. I was at least a little bit relieved by that.
I'm pretty much that type of person. People would certainly wonder why I came to the moon to do such a thing.
Well, I do think that. Lisa chuckled at my frank statement.
Well, now let's talk about you, okay?
Since she went to the trouble of saving me from the police, bringing me here since it looked like I had no place to go, and even letting me take a bath, my good character dictated that I answer her. Okay, I come from a settlement village on the outskirts of the Eastern Outers District.
Oh? That great place with the greenery, right?
Outsiders say that, yeah. Isn't it just because we're all from the Stone Age?
Well, people who would come to the moon were all city dwellers when they were back on Earth. They missed their greenery.
I was beginning to feel like I was being blanketed and confused by a high level of logic. Are the cities on Earth full of greenery then?
Well, I guess the way I worded it was kind of bad. Even on Earth, there wasn't much greenery in the cities. For some reason, people are attracted to the natural outdoors from times long past. Perhaps it's something ingrained in us. Aren't you the same?
I was about to refute her point, but decided against it. In another case, I ran away from home over there.
Okay, your name? Is it okay to ask?
Lisa asked me without showing any signs of trying to be forcing on me. Or any signs to be forcing me. Like I'd be able to get away with not answering that if I said no.
That's fine if you don't want to. But it would be kind of inconvenient to call for you. So I'd like some sort of name. The girl who carried you on your...
wait.
The girl you carried on your back, she's called Hagana. It's not her real name.
Huh?
Well, it's not like she doesn't want to open up to me, but she's like a wild animal, and that she's very cautious about things. Hagana is originally a word from the language of the Wanderers. Well, actually, does anything come to mind when I use the term Wanderers?
No clue.
I guess that's to be expected, but I guess the moonbred being free from Earth had this kind of meaning. Sorry, talk to myself again. It's my first time talking to a kid who was born and bred on the moon.
People born and bred on the moon. There's still probably not even 10,000 or so. What? It was like 2050? Maybe? 2100? People working in Newton City said that it was due to the fact that many people weren't able to have children. Most of the people who came from Earth were 10 years old at the youngest when they rode the orbital elevator. There was a huge difference in gravity between the moon and the Earth, and thus there were issues with their bodies. Of course, to them, Earth was their birthplace, and the common sense they possessed came from there as well.
Well, this is like trivia. The whole paths crossing and exchanging wisdom thing.
Lisa smiled with satisfaction while uttering those words. If that girl clad in black, Hagana, would be considered strange, then Lisa must also be strange for helping and harboring me. Anyhow, even in this day and age and living on the moon, she's all into religion and cherishes her real books. To put it bluntly, I wonder if she was a social outcast. However, I had a favorable impression of Lisa, even though she didn't seem to take part in the competitions that raged on in this competitive city. It was true she wasn't pushing ahead, but it didn't feel like she was falling back either. Even in this low-gravity environment, Lisa appeared to have her feet planted firmly on the ground. She looked to me as if she enjoyed just living her life. I was a bit moved seeing that people like that actually existed. I had thought that there were 3 types of people on the moon. The rough and crude from my village who were refined only in speech, the decadent people from the outer sections who couldn't be helped, and the residents of Newton City who took advantage of the low gravity to jump up to lofty heights. These were my thoughts as I looked at Lisa, who was smiling happily to herself. It feels like she could at least be trusted. Yoshiharu.
Huh?
Kawara Yoshiharu.
Oh, your name?
It's my real name, so if you report me, they'd quickly notify my parents. After my blunt answer, Lisa looked at me for a moment, then a smile spread across her face.
I see. Got it. Well then, how about just Hal?
What?
Even if I called you just by your first name, wouldn't it really narrow down who you are? It'd be obvious you were the kid of Japanese immigrants. If it were just Hal, it wouldn't be an issue.
Of course, there wasn't really any reward for turning someone in, but the fact that someone didn't do it from the get-go was also a bit creepy. This was a good thing for me, but suspicion had become a daily thing with the 3 months of wandering around. Lisa noticed the look of suspicion on my face and said,
Well, if this were Earth, I could just say the Lord's will be done. And smile and everyone would accept it.
Totally no clue what you're talking about.
Well, that's true. This is the moon after all. Although sometimes I'm starting to get the urge to put one of those on.
What? That was what she said, and I wondered what she meant. Though from her expression, she probably just dodged the question if I asked her.
However, it pains me that it's Hagana who'd better fit in the... Look like my hair color's too light.
She talked to herself while brushing her hair with her fingers. It wasn't on Hagana's level, but I thought she had beautiful straight hair. Back in the village, everyone placed blonde women on the pedestal, and I kinda like girls with deeper colored hair. To put it bluntly, like someone who's in front of me right now.
Speaking of which, I wonder what that girl's doing now. It's almost time to sleep, but perhaps she wasn't planning on taking a bath?
And right after she said that, supposedly there was only Lisa and Hagana here, so logically it must have been Hagana. But there was no reason to be surprised. But I did get a shock when I spotted Hagana coming in from the dark hallway. What the fuck?
Hey, Hagana!
Lisa got up hurriedly from the sofa, and Hagana in question squinted her eyes, wearing a surprised, puzzled expression. In her hands were ridiculously neatly folded pajamas and what looked like a change of underwear, but what got us all in a fluster was her appearance. She was wearing shorts that revealed her slender... Those are short shorts? That revealed her slender long legs all the way up to her hips, and a sleeveless shirt through which you could almost see her chest.
Haven't I told you many times never to wander around in something like that?
Is it fine since I'm not just showing? She replied surprisingly at how angry Lisa was and went quickly into the changing room. It looked like Lisa couldn't figure out what to say and simply growled in front of the changing room door. As for me, to my great distress, I averted my eyes and thought, really? Her panties are white. I was oddly childlike compared to the color of her clothing and ridiculous cheekiness. Well, it wasn't bad. What? But seeing that kind of underwear beneath her totally black stockings would kind of be like a letdown, I thought to myself. I then noticed Lisa glaring at me.
Erase that from your memory.
I couldn't just brush it off by laughing at her ridiculously serious face because of her starry glare. I nodded twice obediently.
She's because she's so hard-headed.
Lisa sighed and shook her head. Even though it looked like she had all the power here, she had no way of controlling Hagana's thoughts. It really did seem like Lisa's hobby was to shelter runaways. That was fine, but I felt inclined to show her respect for her words. It was a strange thing.
You try to show at least a little shame too, okay?
It was the first time I'd ever heard that in my life, but I nodded. I possessed manners that would lead people to think I seriously wanted to distance myself from the crude culture of my home village, where people wouldn't get naked in front of people of the same gender were considered what? However, Lisa waited for my nod and added an additional line.
I'm looking forward to your manners the next time we eat.
What a cheap move, I mentally yelled at Lisa. I guess in the end, this lady was the type to take you by surprise if you let your guard down. Lisa was laughing merrily as she returned to the sofa and started playing with her multi-function terminal. I'd already taken the bath, but I wasn't quite sleepy yet, so I sat on the floor at once and opened my PC. A bit afterwards, there was a quarrel between Hagana and Lisa. Hagana figured that since we were facing the other way and engrossed in what we were doing, she could just walk back to her room with only a towel on her shoulder, whereas Lisa tried to push her back into the changing room. Lisa was frantic, saying that this had been in place with a better manners before, but I thought perhaps it was just a warmer place because, you know, it was just two females living together. I felt that I had come across a great place. Wink. Even though we had separate rooms, they were well cleaned. Wink. I don't even know where I was going with that. If helping people out like that was a hobby, then this unhealthy interest in this church thing and this crucified man was probably also not bad. Morning. The first thing I did was confirm that I could survive another day.